This time of year, people get so confused. They confuse me with those men from Persia. Let's set the record straight here now. They're three kings from Orient are. I'm the king, much better by far. My name, Herod. Now, look me up in the encyclopedia and you will find that some people refer to me as Herod the Great. How fitting. I'm Herod, and I'm great. And don't you forget it. Some people think that I'm one of the greatest leaders to ever be in the Middle East. And some think that I'm a raving lunatic. But I guess they can have their opinions. But this morning I'd like to spend some time talking about one of my favorite subjects. Me. Well, I'm not really Jewish, even though I was king of the Jews. You see, I'm Idumean. Might not mean a whole lot to you, but modern-day Jordan is the region. When the Hasmonean dynasty took over, Israel expanded its territory. And all of us who lived in Idumea were forced to become Jewish, whether we wanted to or not. So in my bloodline, I was half Jewish. But the way I lived my life, I was 100% pagan. Now, when my father advanced in the ranks in Roman leadership, he eventually became the procurator over all of Judea. And when I turned 25 years of age, he put me in charge of Galilee. I thought it was wonderful. The Galileans thought it was dreadful. In particular, the Sanhedrin, those ruling Jewish officials, they didn't like me because I wasn't really Jewish. But you know, in life sometimes it's not so important what you know as it is who you know. And when I went away to school, it happened to be with a wonderful man named Antony. Maybe you've heard of him from history. Messed up with that wretched witch Cleopatra. She was the death of him, really. The entire time I told him stay away from her, but you know what? He was in a state of denial. Get it? Egypt in a state of denial. Well, if you don't laugh at my jokes, I will. I am so funny. I am. Well, anyway, right before Anthony died, I paid him this massive sum of money. And because of that, and my great leadership ability and strength and stamina and oomph, he made me the king of Judea. King Herod. Doesn't it have a nice ring to it? King Herod. Go ahead, say it with me. King Herod. You do that so well, yes. Well, I became the king, and my very first act as king was to offer a sacrifice to the god Jupiter. You see, I had more gods than I had fingers and toes. When I was in Jerusalem, I would obey a few of those Jewish laws. To me, most of it was nonsense. I would just do whatever I needed to do to look good politically. So I always wanted to make sure I was blending in with whoever I was with. Well, the first thing I did when I got back to Jerusalem was take out some of the opposition. I told you about that Sanhedrin, those 70. Ooh, 25 of them liked me, 45 of them didn't want me in power. So guess what I did? I had 45 of them put to death. You see, sometimes a king's got to do what a king's got to do to stay in power. So with no opposition, I could do whatever I wanted to do. You see, you need to stay in control. And you can't let anyone else ever be in control. I'm a very passionate man, as you can tell. One of the things I'm passionate about is women. Oh, let me tell you about some of my wives. My first wife, her name was Doris. And you could have called her Boris because she was boring. But She gave me a nasty son whose name was Antipater, and he was boring as well, and I just got tired of them, so I had them banished from the kingdom. Now, my second wife, her name was Miriam. Drop dead gorgeous. Oh, Miriam, yes. I loved her so much that I hated her guts. But I was so jealous because I was afraid, since she was so beautiful, that someone else might want to be with her. And I started to think, what might happen after I died? Would someone else be her new husband? Would she be in the arms of another man? So I made a law. I said, on the day that I died, Miriam was to be put to death. And that way she could never be in the arms of another man. And somehow she heard about my law and didn't like it very much. In fact, she didn't even want to be with me. And somehow word started to circulate that Miriam was having an affair with another man. I don't know whether it's true or not, but poor Miriam was put to death. Mm-hmm. So I had to find another wife, and guess what her name was? Miriam. Didn't have to learn a new name, that's good. But this Miriam was just as beautiful as the other Miriam, only, well, she had no social standing. Her dad was a priest, but really a nobody. So whenever I married the first Miriam, her grandfather was the high priest, and that made me look very Jewish. So I needed to still look Jewish. So her dad was a priest, so I made her dad the new high priest, and that suddenly gave me social standing once again. You see, a king's got to do what a king's got to do. But the second Miriam, that relationship was wonderful for the first 2 weeks, and I quickly came to the realization that the new Miriam simply did not match up to the old Miriam, you know. Sometimes you don't know what you've got till it's gone. But hey, I'm still looking for a Miriam number 3. Are you interested? Oh, okay. Seems like she wants to pass more on to something else. I don't know. But, to tell you the truth, I've had 10 different wives. Some of them were just smooth political moves. Some of them were pretty faces I like prancing around the palace. But there were times when I had to have family members put to death. In particular, a number of my sons. See, they knew that I had been in control of Galilee as a son, and some of them thought they should control Galilee. But there's only one person in control here, and that's me. You can't give up control. Well, not only am I passionate about women, I'm also very passionate about building things. You see that lovely setting, that's my palace at Caesarea. And not only did I build one there, I built the Herodium near Bethlehem. That's named after me, of course. And, well, also in Jerusalem and Masada. I had to continue to build fortresses to protect my empire. To keep my people safe, of course. And I also built an elaborate aqueduct system and amphitheaters and coliseums and building upon building. In fact, if you see the Wailing Wall and the Jews who continue to pray there, and you see this massive square stones, almost 12 to 15 times your cement block. Do you know what archaeologists call those? Herodian stones. They name them after me. Oh, don't you just love me? I love me a bushel and a peck, and I'll hug myself around the neck. I'm talking in my sleep about me. Oh, my. Well, perhaps you didn't know any of those things about me, but you probably know this story. When those wise Magi came from the eastern country. I remember it like it was yesterday, asking that question, where is he who is born King of the Jews. Now, I knew that none of my wives had given birth, and I knew that none of my mistresses had given birth. There was only one king of Jerusalem, of Judea, and they were looking at him, but I played it cool. I had my scholars search where was a new ruler to be born, a new king of the Jews. They searched, they studied, they dug up that it was to be in Bethlehem, the house of bread, Bethlehem. So I sent the Magi off. Well, go, search, find that child. When you have found him, come find me, so that I too may go and worship him. Worship him? I think not. It's going to bash in his little head. There was to be no other king, only one king. But you know those magi, they never returned. They never showed up. Not a word, not a trace. I had been duped. You don't dupe the king. So I made an order that every son, every boy 2 years old and younger in and surrounding Bethlehem was to be put to death. Oh, you think I'm mean and nasty? It was only about 15 babies. What's the big deal? Didn't you hear the arrangement that I made on the day that I was to die? I was afraid that people wouldn't mourn my passing, that people might not be sad when dear old Herod was gone. And so I made a law that on the day of my death, 300 people in Jericho were to be put to death. And that way people would be sad with my passing. Great leader or raving lunatic? Herod was a nut job. Truly was. But you know what? You probably have a lot more in common with him than what you think. Something he struggled with and something many of us struggle with is the whole issue of control. See, Herod was paranoid that somebody else was going to take over his throne. Somebody else was going to call the shots. And some of you out there are probably control freaks. You want to be large and in charge. But you've come here this morning to worship he who's called the King of the Jews. But I wonder how much you've given him control. Have you given him control over your thought life? Have you given him control over your actions? Have you given him control over your tongue? Have you given him control over your finances? In many ways, the throne is symbolic of your life. And whoever is in control is the one who sits on that throne. And so much our entire lives we spend living trying to be the one in control. Was just counseling with someone from the congregation earlier this week, and they had shared recently how they had to relinquish control. That they'd been dealing with an issue and struggling with it for so long, but they reached this point they just had to say, God, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. I'm totally giving it over to you. You know, I've heard different times over my ministry of people sharing that was the turning point in their very lives, in their relationship with God. When they relinquished, when they gave up control, suddenly God moved in a miraculous, amazing way. I don't know where you need to surrender control this morning. Perhaps as a congregation, even as we think about the Walnut Street property, we need to relinquish control. My prayer has been, God, I want your will to be done. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. And God, if it's your plan for us to be able to build on that property, may it be so. And God, if it's your plan for somebody to donate 20 acres and for us to go and start somewhere all over again, may it be so. And God, if it's your plan for us to stay here and to plant another church and building somewhere else, may it be so. But God, I want what you want. So whether it's as a congregation or whether it's things in our individual lives, it's always a state of surrender. It's really losing control, the grip that we have, and it's handing it over to God. Because if we try to handle and deal with all these things on our own, well, we're the one who's insane. In just a moment, you'll be having the sacrament of communion. I don't know what you need to surrender or where you're struggling in control, but would challenge you to offer that to the true King. But as you seek his face and turn things over, he enables things to work out in his ways. And life then is beautiful. So may it be so. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.